Hello and welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to be showing you how I make up the pockets on my Roman blinds. I reinforce the pockets on my Roman blinds with buckram. I know a lot of people do this, but for those of you that don't do it, I thought you might want to see exactly how it's done. On the blog I'm going to put all the measurements down, so if you want to refer back and see how I've worked it all out, hopefully it'll be on there and you'll be able to understand it. I use eyelets, and eyelets are quite strong, and if you don't reinforce the pockets, what can happen is that the eyelet, obviously it's got quite a bit of strain on it, lifting the blind up and down all the time, that can pull through the lining if you don't reinforce the pocket. So it makes sense to do what I'm doing, but also I think it makes the pockets look nice and crisp and nice and clean looking, and so they don't, on a wide blind, they don't go wavy. You know, you've got a nice crisp edge to them, so it looks lovely from the back. So I'm going to show you how I do it. I'm going to just move you around so hopefully you can see what I'm doing, and hopefully it is clear. Now let me just move you around a little bit so you can see exactly what I've got on the table. Here we go, there we are. Right, okay, so I've made my lining up. This is for an actual blind, so which I'm not using a small piece. I'm using reasonable width. The blind is 113 centimeters wide, or it will be. So I've cut my lining to 135 centimeters wide, and then I turn in 3 centimeters on each end. You know exactly what you need to do on that one. Now, to get it square, because even though you cut it square, sometimes they run off a little bit. The best thing to do is to fold up a little bit more maybe than you need on that bottom fold, so make sure you cut enough, and then just line up your edges on each side. And so even if it dips a little bit on that first cut, this is the bit you're going to tuck into the hem, so you're going to trim it up afterwards anyway, so that doesn't really matter what that bit does. What you want is you want this bit to be nice and straight and this bit to be nice and square. So I've pressed up the bottom bit first, so we saved a bit of time. So that's what I've done. So basically, let's go over it again. So that's it. Now I'm going to open it up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay in the buckram that I'm using, and I'm using a 1 inch wide buckram, and it's single adhesive side. If you haven't got 1 inch, you haven't got a reel of 1 inch buckram, and it's not something you'd have in stock unless you were going to do this, what you can do, and I have mentioned it on a previous blog, is buckram tears quite easily. So if you want to have a go at this, but you don't want to go to the expense of having a whole roll of it, what you can do is you can get your ordinary headed buckram, hopefully it's got an adhesive side to it, and then you can just tear it. It tears really straight. So, rather than going to a whole expense, if you just want to have a practice or just have a little go at it, that's a good way of doing it. So anyway, I'm going to use the one I've got, and I'm going to lay it along the crease line that I've made here, and I'm adhesive side down obviously, and I'm going to just press it up. What I am going to do is I'm going to go about 1 millimetre higher than my crease line, just so I've got enough room to fold my fabric round. Only a tiny bit. There we go. Right, let's fold it up, and then you just move it up so that buckram is laying right in that crease line, and then just go over it again. Okay. Now at this stage you could pin it, but there's really no need. I mean, obviously the buckram's gone soft because you've just steamed it, but it's all held in there quite nicely. And then what you do is you put it under your machine, and you machine just on the top. I'm going to put handbags on this because it's a fairly long blind, so handbags on the first what I call handbags. I'll show you. They're breakaway clips on the first 2 rows, because that's part of the child safety regulations. If you want to knot under the toggle, which is what I do, because it's a fairly substantial blind, and I don't want customers sort of manhandling it a bit, and that cord going through that toggle and being looped over in the actual spools, because that's just a call out, and you don't really need that. So I'm going to make the first 2 pockets literally the width of my buckram, which is at 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres. So I'm going to sew it 2.5 centimetres along here, and then I'm going to do another row about a presser foot width away from this edge, so that my rod stays at the back of that pocket and doesn't put pressure on the eyelets. So I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to machine it, because you don't need to see me doing that. I'll show it to you after I've done it, and then I'll go on to how I measure up and do the next pocket. You'll only need me to show you these first 2 pockets, and then you'll have got the idea of it. After the first 2 pockets are machined at 2.5 centimetres from here, the next one will be 3 centimetres. So I'll just go up a little bit, and I'll go 3 centimetres from there. That's because the handbag takes, it extends the pocket a little bit. So I do the first 2 pockets at 2.5, and every other one after that, it's got 3 or 4 or 5, will be 3 centimetres, because they won't have the handbags on them, and I want them all to finish at more or less the same level. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll pause it, machine it, I'll come back and show you how I do the next one, because once you've got these first 2, everything else is exactly the same. Okay, see you in a minute. Hi, welcome back. Okay, so I have machined this now. So I've machined it at 2.5 centimetres, and then I've just brought the presser foot width in, and I've just machined another row of stitches. Your eyelets might actually cut into that part of it, but it doesn't matter, because the majority of it is still intact, and that's what keeps your rod at the back. So now I'm going to do my next pocket. I'm going to mark it out. So I've got 35 centimetres between each pocket, so I'm not going to do a cascade. They're almost going to sit one on top of the other. I find they cascade a little bit anyway. They're never perfectly on top of each other. So I'm going to do 35 centimetres, which means I need to add on 2.5 centimetres, because that's the width of my pocket folded on the next row up, because it's going to be 2 lots of 2.5, and then it's going to go on to 3. So 2.5 plus 35 is 37.5. So that's where I'm going to mark it. Let me just move you around a little bit so you can see exactly what I'm going to do. Let's get a pencil out. Right, so here we go. So I have got, where you can see, so I've got 37.5. I do this with a pencil on the back. 37.5. So I'm just measuring from where I last stitched. And there we go. So now I will draw a faint line from those 2 points. You can still see me. There we go. Let's bring that down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. My line is here. You may not be able to see it particularly well. So now I'm going to put my buckram on that line, because it's not a pressed line anymore, it's a pencil line. It's just easier to pencil line it than it is to try and move that second pocket and subsequent pockets up and keep measuring it from the point you've already done it. It's easier to draw a line. So again, I'm just going to use that like I did to the first one, just put it a little bit further up, tear that bit off. There we go. So that's just a couple of, maybe a mil above, not much. Press it. There we go. Right. do is I'm going to move it up. And you don't want to go right the way over because you'll get it in the wrong position, but literally my buckram's here, and I'm just making sure that I've got it creased where the buckram is sitting. You can feel it quite easily, and also make sure that my sides are still married up. That keeps it nice and square. There we go, that's it. So now I'm going to do another press, and again I'll take it back to the machine and I'll machine 2.5 from here. Again, let me turn you around. You probably don't need to see me do that, but whoops, that's not 35 centimeters. When you measure it to where your line is going to be, that measures 35 centimeters, so I know it's correct. And then the next one that I measure up from, I won't measure up 35 plus 2.5, I'll measure up 35 plus 3, so it'll be 38 from where my last stitch line came from. So instead of 37.5, it'll be 38 on this next one, because I've already done my 2 rows at 2.5 where I've got my handbags on. Hopefully that's fairly straightforward and easy for you to understand. I don't think I need to machine this and you know, take you through each step, but they are really lovely. They're nice. It's a nice way of finishing off the lining, keeping it nice and crisp. And then what I'll do is I'll make up my Roman blind. I'll put my lining in rather. I'll interlock it. I do put stab stitches in, but that might be another quick tutorial later on, because I don't go backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. I literally go in, out, and I knot it into the lining 4 times, and then I feed it under the lining and snip it off, so it doesn't make huge holes in the back of my blackout. And I haven't really ever had problems with light coming through. If I did, I'd probably just cut a little piece of blackout and either glue it on or put a self-adhesive tape on the back and just pop it on where that hole is. It's so discreet, you wouldn't really know it was even there, to be honest, because everything's on the back of the pocket where it pulls up. So anyway, hopefully that's been helpful to you, and if you want to have a go at putting buckram in to reinforce your pockets and making them nice and crisp, as I say, you don't have to buy a whole roll. You can just use ordinary buckram and just tear it. If you don't have adhesive buckram, it still works. It's just a bit more of a fiddle to actually get it to sit and stay where you've asked it to stay. So if it's got a little bit of self-adhesive, heat adhesive, then that's obviously much better. But as always, I'll put all the instructions on the blog, and if you've got any queries, just get in touch with me, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.